Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Rodriguez. I'm 21 years old. I live in Las Vegas, and I major in hospitality management. And I most previously lived in Atlanta for 20 years, where I went to rehab a total of 3 times. In my young teen life, I went to rehab 3 times. All 3 times I went to an enthusiastic sobriety associated rehab. So, insight program, full circle, pathways, cornerstone. There's numerous different rehabs that operate with a similar system, but they have a different title. But yeah, I wanted to create this just to inform the public in terms of what's really occurring in our communities. And why it shouldn't really be happening, or I don't really know what the solution would look like for something like this to improve, to be honest. But by releasing a video of me talking about my experience, I hope that it will travel and inspire people to really make a change in our substance abuse industry, in term treatment wise. I think that would really be beneficial towards our society. But without further ado, I'll just kind of, get into my experience with rehabs, most specifically, in enthusiastic sobriety. Yeah, so the first time I attended rehab was around the age of, I believe, like 15. I was 15 or I was 14. It was my sophomore year in high school, and I just transferred to a public school, and I wasn't playing football anymore, so I wasn't doing so well. So my parents, I wasn't doing so well in terms of mentally. I didn't really have an outlet. I was engaging in a lot of substance abuse. I was smoking a lot of marijuana, or weed, whatever you want to call it. I know marijuana sounds like a really technical term, but yeah, I was smoking a lot of weed. I was also, going to my psychiatrist, monthly just to check in, and get a prescription refilled for Klonopin, which is a benzodiazepine, and several other different medications and stuff like that. So pretty much I ended up attending this rehab because my parents didn't want me smoking weed, which is understandable. You don't really want a kid that's really young to be engaging in smoking weed and stuff. It can really slow down your cognitive thinking skills and stuff like that. If you smoke prematurely, it really can have an impact on you when you turn 25 or 21 or whatever. Your brain just stops kind of like developing. But anyways, yeah, so I get brought into this rehab, and right away you can kind of tell that it's not like a huge building, kind of like looking like a jail or thing or whatever, with different units. It's not really like that. It's just one building, and in the back they have like kind of like a lounge area called the shop. But before I get into all that stuff, I got to talk about my intake meeting. And I'm not going to be naming any names in this video. I'm not going to be naming any counselors, just because I don't really feel like that's, really a good way to handle this issues. I don't think it's by putting people on blast, is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, yeah, this rehab was really screwed up, man. It's really screwed up. I'm telling you, like, this is why I'm making this YouTube. I don't make YouTube videos. I'm not an editor. I'm not a videographer, so it's pretty crazy, for me to be doing this all in one take and just kind of talking about it. But, I was about to cuss, but, I'm going to do it, man. I'm gonna talk about it. So, yeah, pretty much I get brought in, and they tell you, like, oh, we can teach you a new way of thinking, that doesn't require the use of substances. Okay, like sobriety, I guess, is that what you're trying to say? Abstinence or something. I don't really know. So as I'm, meeting with this counselor and talking with them, they meet with you and your parents individually. So they split you up. So they could be telling your parent a whole different message and then telling you something completely different, which pretty much is the case a lot of the times. Unfortunately, it's like closing a sale on a car. You don't really care, heavily on how that client is going to feel when they drive off the lot. As long as that thing is running, lemon laws, you'll be fine. That's how it felt, really. But anyways, as I was in the meeting area, I should say, and I was talking to this counselor, they're describing to me this program and stuff, and my parents said, okay, we're gonna leave you here for a little while, you can go out in the back and talk to all these people and stuff. So immediately you walk into the back, and you smell like cigarettes and stuff. People smoke cigarettes all the time in this rehab, and you'll see like middle schoolers and adults both smoking, cigarettes. So it's not like, where they say, oh, is that a 12-year-old? Like, he can't be smoking cigarettes. They don't really care. They'll bum you a cigarette. They'll buy you a pack. It doesn't matter. But anyways, I go in the shop, and it's really small. It's probably the size of, a little bit bigger than a storage like center, like it's not that big, I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but it's not ginormous or nothing. It's really like a rectangle, maybe, I don't know, 50 by 45. I'm just making a guess. I really don't know. Like 60 by 45 or something, the dimensions. But, you walk in the back, and they have like a little concession stand, bar stools and people playing cards and stuff. But, right away you'll get bombarded by people coming up to you and hugging you and telling you that they love you and that you're going to be all right, which is kind of strange to me because I don't really know any of these people. I don't know why they're hugging me and why they're touching me and stuff. So that's a little bit odd right off the bat. And why they're being so friendly. I don't even know who the hell you are, so why are you being so friendly towards me? I never really understood that. So pretty much, yeah, you kind of hang out a little bit, and they might have like a meeting or something later in the night, at 7 o'clock, where they kind of gather around in the shop and they sit around and, pretty much classic AA style, where they just share about their life and what step they're on and whatever the meeting topic may be about. Yeah, so, but I remember in this specific instance, I didn't really just kind of go in the back and chill and then go back to my house. Went to the back into the shop, and I hung out, and these people just, right away, like, all right, we're going to go to hangout and stuff. And if you don't know what hangout is a term for just like, where everybody goes basically to hang out, smoke cigarettes, whatever the hell it is you want to do, play Xbox. Usually partake in one of these group houses or a local park. Wills Park was the place we used to go. Don White, I think, is the name of it. I don't remember it in Roswell. It was like Don something, but we used to go to that park too. And then sometimes up and coming, we used to go to the parks up there too. But yeah, so with pretty much I go to, hang out or whatever it is you want to label it as, where we're just hanging out and stuff. And it was just a bit odd, I don't really know any of these people. I'm just kind of sitting here, I've seen a lot of people rip like box mods and everything like that, nicotine obviously, but a lot of people smoking cigarettes and stuff. I wasn't really a big cigarette smoker. It always hurt my stomach when I would smoke cigarettes, and it kind of made me anxious. It never really made me feel like, good. It just made me feel like trash. So yeah, it was a difficult time. I ended up later on returning back to the meeting area. I forgot how many days had passed, but I ended up meeting again in that meeting area. And I basically was, peer pressured into force, or, I'm a adolescent at this period in my life, so I can't really make my own decisions. So I pretty much had to sign the outpatient papers, which is pretty much what occurred. I had to sign the outpatient papers, and the one thing that I really didn't like was that the counselor told me, it's going to be all right. It's going to be 30 days. And once you're done, you can go back to school or whatever. And I said, that sounds amazing. Sign me up. 30 days is not a long time. I can do that. Come to find, it actually was 124 days that I spent in this rehab, 4 times the amount they told me, which is ridiculous. I don't really like, if you're a counselor, you shouldn't be lying to people. You should be telling them the truth straight up front. And if it was really 120 days, I wish I was told that, not that it was 30 days. That's, pretty ridiculous in terms of a program saying that they're talking about, how important honesty is and all these things. And you're in this meeting and they just kind of blatantly lie to your face, so anyways, what happened next was excruciatingly painful because, first of all, these people aren't really, they don't go to Emory and study, psychiatry and psychology. they train themselves pretty much. They have their own training systems. Think about it kind of like the seminary. You know, you can get into their counselor training system, but it doesn't have to do so much with science. It has to do with the AA and how they depict, you know, the service mission, you know, in terms of how they treat people and their values and principles and everything. So it's not so much science. Like there's a lot of counselors there that don't have college degrees, which amazes me, because you shouldn't really, if you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be treating people with schizophrenia or serious mental health issues. You know, if you're not prepared for that, then don't be lying to people and telling them that your treatment program is going to actually help them, because it's not. It's really going to confuse people. So what happened next was excruciatingly painful, because they ended up then telling my parents, just take him off cold turkey off his medicine. You know, he'll be all right. You know, as long as he's coming to the meetings and hanging out, he'll be all right. Ridiculous. You know, anybody who is taking a benzodiazepine daily, or any medication for the matter, you know, you shouldn't just take somebody off cold turkey, especially when this rehab doesn't really have a detox program or anything like that. They kind of just tell you, yeah, you know, just get off the medication, you know, you'll be fine, you know. So I'm here just sweating and my extremities are freezing cold at hangout. It's not enjoyable at all, you know. It's really horrible, because then, you know, you get like $60 cash, you know. You're just in a horrible state, and you know, you could go up to the counselors and say, look, I don't feel so well, and they'll say, why don't you just go talk about it with people and stuff, or how's your God connection? I don't really see how that would help in this circumstance, but that was a common solution that was extended towards, you know, the people in recovery, in terms of what you should do in certain situations. That I don't really think that's a solution to, you know, for everything, to go and talk to somebody and share. And I don't think that really is beneficial in every single circumstance. I think some other people may not know how to relate to you and stuff. So I don't really know if that's beneficial in every situation. But yeah, you know, I ended up eventually going through their outpatient, going through their what's it called? I'm sorry, aftercare. And yeah, and I was in support group for a little bit, and then I left, you know, because I didn't like it at all. You know, I said, I'm in high school, man. Like, I shouldn't be doing these meetings and things like that around people that are smoking cigarettes all the time, and a lot of the people that attend this rehab don't really behave, or are not really good role models, in my opinion. You know, I don't really want to be like them when I grow up. I don't want to be like those people. I want to be my own person. I like doing what I'm doing now. I don't want to be sponsored by someone that doesn't really have my ideals, you know, which is what you're supposed to do. You have to get a sponsor, pretty much. So yeah, I pretty much end up leaving this rehab. I think it's just a complete, you know, piece of, you know, crap. I'll say that. A piece of crap is what this rehab is. And I should say this too, you know, before I left, I actually met someone, and she was such a great person, man. Kind soul. I mean, really a great human being. You know, I loved talking to them. They would always give me great, you know, advice in terms of what I should do with my life, and vice versa. You know, we were really good friends in this program. You know, and I didn't know this at the time, but, you know, one day she ended up telling me, you know, I'd love for you to be, you know, or all I wish is for you to be in my grip. You know, I just, you know, I was young at the time, so I was I don't know, remember what I did or what I said. I think I just kind of like got scared and ran away or something. But, you know, she stayed in the program and I didn't. And a couple months later, 3 or 4 months later, she ended up passing away. Which is unfortunate, you know, to be hearing something like that, you know. And not that I feel guilty about, you know, not being there, regrets. I don't really feel that, but I feel more as in, you read like obituaries and things like that of these people, and they mentioned that the rehabs that they were in, they were doing what they were told, that this should have never happened. And it kind of just makes you upset because you're like, why? I wish these people would still be here. I don't think it's correct for them to be gone because people took advantage of them took advantage of them and gave them the wrong advice. I think that's pretty screwed up, man, really. And this isn't the only circumstance or situation where this occurred. Actually, there's a lot more, really. I remember one week there was 3 people that passed away. And this is true. There was a week where 3 people in this program, or there was a month, excuse me, maybe not a week, that'd be like pretty crazy, but a month where 3 people actually passed away from drug-related deaths. So you're thinking, what is happening here? Why is this why is this happening? It's supposed to be a rehab, well, why are people dying of overdoses? It's not something that I want to be seeing or witnessing when I'm 15 years old. So anyways, yeah, so I get on with my life, I just play football and stuff. I'm okay, man. I'm just smoking weed and stuff. I've just vowed to never take pharmaceutical drugs again. Like, I never get back on Zoloft, or I don't take Klonopin anymore. I just smoke weed. That's it. I don't take any Vyvanse or Adderall or none of that. Just smoking weed, playing sports, going to class. That's all I'm doing. Pandemic era. And eventually I think I ended up getting into like some psychedelic usage, but at the time that was pretty much it. There's nothing more than that that I was doing. So yeah, eventually I ended up returning back to this rehab because I just wanted to get some time sober, after my experience of, maybe not getting treated so well in society for doing substances. I realized maybe I should just go back to this rehab and get clean. And I think I'll be okay. And I was really interested at the time of, entering the psychology field and stuff when I graduate high school and stuff. So I'm like, this is perfect. Like, I get to learn more about, addiction and, healthy mental, health, or that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. Having good mental health. That's what I should have said. Having good mental health, I was really interested in all that. So, I ended up returning to this rehab, and yeah, there wasn't really anything alarming this time around. I really kind of just came in and did my time, and eventually I ended up kind of leaving before I finished my outpatient because I think I was just getting like really burnt out with treatment. I was already seeing a psychologist for 2 hours a week. So you add on top of that like a whole substance or a whole rehab program too. It kind of felt too much for me. And I was getting really burnt out. So I ended up just kind of leaving. And yeah, I was just kind of, the only thing I will say about that second run, I did feel a little off in terms of why there was outpatient counselors and things like that treating people that were very obviously in psychosis. They had a hard time just making, complete sentences. I think it's pretty inappropriate to have somebody like that in a rehab that doesn't have, like I said, these people are not people that go to like, Emory, or they don't go to UG, they don't go to college in general and study, actual real protocols that you should follow for situations like this. They kind of just say, well, you go into outpatient, you just share and stuff, eventually you'll be fine and everything, and with the program, and like you get your step work done. Like, that doesn't, how does it help somebody in psychosis? I think they need something a little more. It's no surprise that that kid actually, or that adult actually ended up going to another substance abuse rehab, because I assume that they just didn't fit in well at this rehab. So yeah, yeah, that's all I pretty much have to say about that kind of second run. After that, I pretty much fell into like the darkest time in my life. Whew. I mean, really. I'd woken up at the hospital at Northside Duluth. I'd almost lost my life because, at the time, extremely unsafe. I please don't do this. I mean, seriously, like this is extremely dangerous to be doing. You can die just like that. I can't even snap, but you get the point. It's screwed up. But at this time, I was working heavily inside of this one kitchen, Hooters. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, I was crushing up blue 30s or the perk 30s or whatever the hell you want to call it, the fake pills. This small, like smaller than Skittle type pills that contain fentanyl most of the time. So I pretty much would take those and I would crush them up, and then I would just snort lines of it, and it would hit you super quickly. And yeah, that's pretty much what I would do, and extremely unsafe, like I mentioned, because the drug enters your system extremely quick when it goes through, your nasal cavity and stuff, because it goes straight to your brain. Opposed if you take it orally, then it has to break down in your system and stuff. And I think that's a lot slower than just snorting it up your nostril. But without getting too much into that stuff, I know that's kind of screwed up to talk about. Yeah, so I ended up waking up at Northside Duluth Hospital, and then I ended up going into detox at Peachford, and then I started sweating it all out, on the crappy gymnast like mattress that they have, the kind of stuff that people tumble on where it's kind of tough, and it's like got that kind of consistency where it's like fake leather where your sweat will just accumulate on it. It's not like an actual mattress. It's just really a piece of trash. So I'm in this, I'm at Peachford and I'm just detoxing, and I'm not on Suboxone. I'm not on anything like that. I'm just sitting there, just taking it, sweating, cold as, as like as I can't really. I'm not trying not to cuss. That's why I'm kind of like stumbling a little bit. But yeah, I was just sweating so badly, man. Taking showers like 3 times a day. Hot showers really help. Then eventually I could end up eating, meals again, and that helped a lot. But I get released from Peachford, and I spent 5 days in there. It was not like horrible. It's not like I'm getting thrown into like a penitentiary, but it does. You do feel like you're limited in terms of your liberties. I will say that you can't just go out and walk out and say I'm gonna go home. No, you're in there, and you don't really know how long you're gonna be in there for. The doctors decide, not you. So when I left, I finally I went home for like a little bit, like maybe 30 minutes or something like that. And then I got picked up from these kids from the program. Like I mentioned, the same program, Enthusiastic Sobriety, Insight program, whatever you want to call it. So they pick me up, we go to we go rock climbing. Before we go to the shop and all that stuff, we go rock climbing. And I mean, I don't know, it kind of feels, if you're a retread in a rehab, you know it. You can kind of see it in other people. They kind of are like, losing hope with you, but they don't want to say it, which is kind of screwed up. But I mean, it's the truth. I mean, that's how it feels when you see somebody relapse and come back and relapse and come back. Like, why are you gonna like? They feel like, why should I try, to save this individual? So that's how I felt a little bit on this third trial, I should say, of Enthusiastic Sobriety Insight Program Rehab. Well, this time I actually didn't go straight to outpatient either. I went straight into step 2, which is their inpatient residential program, whatever you want to call it. It's a house up in Dawsonville that you stay in, a 1-story house, and you're always supervised by a counselor. There's usually 2 counselors on shift, and you'll go into a van and pretty much go from that house in Dawsonville to the shop and to functions and the meetings and all that stuff. That is pretty much what occurs. And you stay there, obviously. I didn't get to go home. I didn't get to go home, I think maybe until a year or something, like a year and like 3 months, or that's when I moved back in with my parents again. So for this whole stretch, like I was out of the house, group houses, like sober living homes is what you could call it, you know, is the proper term for it. Yeah, so we would be living in these homes and stuff like that. And before I get into all of that, you know, I should talk about my time in inpatient, aka one of the worst. Well, I should say this: the friends that I made in inpatient, I'm always going to talk to. I don't hate these people. They, honest to God, I bonded very closely with my friends in inpatient. You know, you're sleeping in a room together for 40 days. You get close, man. Obviously, you're going through some pretty hectic times. So, yeah, kind of, you know, just talking and empathizing and all that stuff. You get close with a lot of people. So yeah, you know, in my inpatient time, pretty much, you know, you wake up at the time, man. Honestly, it was like seven something or 8 o'clock in the morning is when you would wake up and go into treatment, or if that's what you even want to call it. Honest to God, that's not treatment. You will never be able to convince me that that is legitimately treatment that occurs in step 2. That's not real substance abuse treatment. That's like a little boarding school camp, you know, like oh, I'm gonna be away for a little while and, you know, suck it up for a little bit and kind of just learn how to be independent. That's pretty much what step 2 is. I don't think it's actually like legitimate treatment. Like I've mentioned, you know, I think that real treatment comes from professionals who study in college and stuff, and you know, they take these, you know, large breaks to do trials and all such and such. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I believe that they're way more qualified to handle these situations and circumstances than an insight counselor. So, yeah, in the treatment, you know, you see a lot of, you know, if you read about enthusiastic sobriety, you'll see a lot of enthusiastic sobriety abuse articles. And I think this is really resonated with me in this last run that I had in rehab. It resonated with me a lot because, you know, I believe that there are people out there in the world that view drug addicts as lesser human beings, and they believe that they can take advantage of them and say whatever they want. They can degrade them. They can do whatever they want. You know, I think there are people in society that think this way. I know there are. I obviously, you know, I've been subjected to this shit all my life. Well, I just cussed, but whatever. I don't really care anymore. But, you know, yeah, you know, I remember, I want you to think about this. I get released from detox after basically almost, you know, coming close to my life, you know, coming to a close and ending. Like, that's it. I wouldn't be making this video. I wouldn't even be here in Las Vegas. Like, I would be in some kind of grave somewhere, you know, in a casket. Honest to God, that's what it would be, what would have happened to me. But, you know, yeah, I don't know. You know, so I'm receiving my first treatment plan in step 2. And I get told this by the step 2 counselor. So you really seem like the cool guy around here, you know? You seem really laid back. So we're going to have you attend the meeting dressed up, opening by singing we're going to open up the meeting. You're going to be singing in Spanish, and you're going to have face paint on. Obviously, I didn't do this because I have brain cells, man. I obviously did not go through with this. And you know what they told me? You're taking your will back. You need to surrender. Surrender? Surrender to being humiliated? No, thank you. You know, I actually care about my reputation and things like that, and I don't really want to go out and look like a fool in front of a lot of my friends, man. Like, because there are a lot of people in that program at the time that were my friends, and that'd be humiliating, man. That's embarrassing. Well, why should I do that? That's stupid. And that was only one of the few things. You know, I saw also, you know, inpatient, the counselor pretty much tells somebody that's sick, hey, you know, like, you know, with a cold, Like I saw them kind of look at them and go like, so would you actually like to be useful today? Mind you, if somebody said that to my daughter in a treatment program, they would have never heard the last of it, because that's not, you don't say those things, especially when you're an adult male and you say that to a female in treatment. Man, that's what I'm talking about, man. This program screwed up, man. I don't know why this was allowed, but it's screwed up, dude. It's screwed up. I know. Um, so I remember seeing that happen one time, and I was like, that's pretty weird, man. But the whole thing is just BS, man. You're in there, you're in that room. It doesn't have to do anything with empowering you in terms of trying to tackle your addiction. It has to do nothing with that. It all has to do with you admitting that you're pretty much a useless drug addict and you have to hit your knees and surrender and pray and decide to devote your life to this type of way of living. Attending meetings, sharing to 7 people before you make a decision. To me, that's no way to live. I want to be empowered. I want to be independent. I want to learn how to cope with substance abuse, harm reduction, those things. I don't want to tell people like, hey, like, do you want to be useful today? Like, no. So, yeah, I remember witnessing that and I thought it was like pretty screwed up. Or just, like I've said, like step 2 was just not a good time for me in terms of treatment. The good times though, there were some, and there were, like I've said, there was when I was with my roommates and things like that. We did some mischievous things, man. In terms of like, stupid things, I should say, like like pissing in the heater vents and shit. It's funny, they turn it up the heat in the wintertime, man. It's like, it smells terrible. So we did stupid stuff like that, and yeah, man. And burning holes in the van and stuff, like in the seats. We'd take lighters and burn holes into the van seats and stuff. You'd see it would be like perforated with holes once we were done, man. But who gives a crap, man? You're making thousands off these people. You can pay for new upholstery. That's not expensive. You know what I mean? Like, suck it up, dude. This is one of the consequences of dealing with substance abusers in the teen years and stuff. We're rebellious as hell. But yeah, I ended up finishing my time in step 2 inpatient. Directly went to living into a group home. Literally all I had was a crappy BMW with like 600,000 miles or some crap like that. Or maybe I'm exaggerating. Was it 300,000? It was something ridiculously high, and every time you would hit the highway, it would like tremble. It would tremble like a lot. So it's pretty, scary to drive. And I had like a sports bag, not like a travel suitcase, but like a sports bag, the one you can, kind of put over your shoulder and stuff, of clothes, a wallet with, $60 cash, a twin size mattress that's just gets thrown in this basement with like 5 other people. It's disgusting. You see like Mountain Dew cans and shit everywhere, or the plastic bottles of them, just kind of lying around and stuff. Cookout bags on the ground, roaches. It's disgusting, dude. Honestly, it is gross. And there was like 12 people living in this house. So people would end up, leaving and stuff at 6 a.m. You can never get good sleep. People leaving, people with crappy cars that would cut off like their freaking mufflers, and it just sounded horrible, dude. Because you would wake up the whole neighborhood, but nobody wants to hear a Honda Civic engine, bro. Like, no. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that trash. It sounds like garbage, So, yeah, so pretty much I'm living in this group home. Every once in a while I go with my mom to go get groceries and stuff, thank God. So, I had some food at this house that wasn't like pizza rolls or frozen garbage that makes you not even feel full and stuff, Swear to God, man. I ended up attending outpatient, and I honestly don't have much too negative things to, or anything really much to comment about my time in outpatient, other than, by the time I finished my treatment, like, of like daily intense treatment, it had already been 6 months. So I'd been in treatment for 6 months. And then finally I could get a job and get some money, really. That's all I wanted to do was just work, I don't like to be kind of lying around, smoking cigarettes, sharing to people about something that happened 6 years ago or whatever, and complain about X, Y, and Z that's completely out of my control. Like I'm good, man. I'm good. I don't need to third step everything with people. Okay. Um, but I should mention some of the kind of things that occurred after my third time in this treatment program is. Or not after, excuse me, after I got done with outpatient and stuff. I attended aftercare. Yeah, I got a job, got into support group, which is just basically you kind of just have to attend the meetings and stuff. That's just not so bad. Oh, and the functions, not so bad. But once you reach support group, you have already kind of like built like a strong bond with the group, so you don't really want to kind of leave or anything like that. You kind of just want to stay there. You're already kind of dependent on the group. So, yeah, so I pretty much end up, attending support group, and I get put on steering committee after a while, and if anybody doesn't know what that is, and I know pretty much nobody will know what that is that doesn't know about this program, is that steering committee are the people that lead the meetings. They're kind of like the role models or whatever you want to call in the group, the future counselors. That's what steering committee is for. But like I've said multiple times, this is such a screwed up program. When I was in steering committee, I probably saw the worst things ever. Ever. Like I mentioned, I guess these counselors don't care if you're a guy or a girl. They'll just say whatever comes to mind. So when I was in these steering committee meetings, we used to meet before we would actually have the meeting. So we would meet. It's kind of like, showing up to like a Bible study earlier or whatever, have a little bit of like a, pre-meeting moment or whatever. So I ended up, attending this rehab and stuff, or excuse me, the steering committee meetings and stuff. And, it's, like I said, it was horrible. I saw the counselors literally gaslighting and, imagine like you're doing well, like, because you are pretty much doing well in steering committee. You're doing excellent. Chances are you have either a year sober, almost a year sober, or you're just rocking it. You're working a solid program. So I'm in these meetings and steering committee. So imagine like you're doing all those things to get put in this committee, and you're sitting there, you're watching this counselor say things like, things like, oh, dude, you're so close to relapsing if you don't, really hunker down on your program. And, I saw him say things that, gaslighting people, saying things that aren't even aren't really what's actually going on. They would convince you that's what's going on. So they would kind of put fear in you. That's how they kind of manipulate you to do what they want, is they put fear in you. Before I actually ended up starting this rehab for a third time, I didn't even mention this, but on the topic of fear, I just wanted to throw this in there. I attended this rehab or I was homeless. Literally nothing. I didn't have a cell phone, no clothes. I was just going to have to walk, I guess, down 400 or something. So obviously I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to opt into being freaking homeless. I'm smarter than that. I'd rather, suck it up and do this program for a year than be freaking homeless, dude. Honest to God, if anybody went the homeless route, dude, I hope you're okay. Props to you for not contributing to this program and its destructive nature. But yeah, so I pretty much end up witnessing all that crap in steering committee, and I say, you know what, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm just going to kind of go into like culinary related things. I was already working at Taco Mac at the time, putting in a lot of hours, legitimately a lot of hours, like 60 hours work weeks, 12-hour days. Not every day, that'd be insane. Or not every week or every day, but it was frequent. So I was really looking forward to attending a culinary school so I can sharpen my skills. And that's pretty much what I did. I attended the Art Institute of Atlanta, and let me tell you, you would think that, oh, great, you're going to culinary school. Maybe you have the potential to take over your father's restaurant. You would think that you'd be supported, man, but you're not. A lot of people end up going like, oh, okay, so you don't want to be a counselor in this program. All right, just get out of here, man. Get out, get out. That's kind of how I felt. A lot of people would say, oh, you kind of look like that guy from Ratatouille and stuff, and I said, whatever. I don't really care. I love cooking, so I'm just gonna continue to cook. So I attended Art Institute of Atlanta, and Art Institute of Atlanta, dude, failed, man. I mean, I was there for like a semester, if you want to call it that, before they sent a mass email out to a bunch of people saying, yeah, guys, we're just going to go ahead and cancel the program because we're broke. I'm like, why didn't you tell us this before the semester started? But I ended up getting my ServSafe certificate, so it didn't end up being like all that bad. So, yeah, I ended up working at a, fine dining restaurant after that, started distancing my way from the group. And, yeah, I just continued to distance myself from the group and to do my own thing, and I still was living in a group house at the time. But eventually I was kind of like, man, screw this. Like, I took a literal math class that kind of talked about quantitative skills and reasoning and stuff. And I remember just kind of sitting there and being like, dude, what am I doing? I've developed like critical thinking skills or something. I'm like, man, like, why am I here? And like, why am I living with these people? I don't want to do this with my life, man. The AA life is not appealing to me, dude. It's not. I don't want to be smoking cigarettes. I don't want to be drinking coffee that's like brewed to, the strongest purity possible. Like, and talk about how crappy my life is because I can't drink or get high. That's sounds like the dumbest thing ever, in my opinion. To me, that's weak. To me, and a lot of people are gonna go like, "How's that weak? How is being sober weak?" Relax. It's just my opinion. When I was in that situation, I felt weak. I never felt strong. I felt like weak if I was going to a bar with friends and I knew that I couldn't drink. Like, it's just dumb. Like, I'd rather learn how to manageably and not harm myself when I do partake in these activities. And that's what I do now, and I'm fine, and I'm successful, and I'm okay with it. I don't feel like bad for using drugs at all. And yeah, so I ended up smoking weed again. I ended up, smoking weed, and I had a 4.0 GPA. I didn't really feel any of the things that people told me in the group were going to occur for me if I were to relapse again. Some people said I was too screwed up to do drugs again and that I was going to die. Some people said that I wasn't going to be successful, that I should just go and become a counselor at the program and stuff like that, like devote my life to, I don't know, Bob Meehan's AA, abusive program. Nah, I'm good, man. I don't think that's really the way for me. I don't find pride in partaking in a job like that, really. No, thank you. So I ended up smoking weed, and then, my roommates, tried to take me off the lease without saying anything. That was pretty crappy, because I actually helped them get that house, Not only did I co-sign the house, but my mom did too. Had my mom not co-signed, they would have never gotten the house. Never got the security deposit back for some reason. I don't know what they did with it. And that's why I don't talk to these people anymore. How are you just going to like go behind someone's back and do things like this? Like, you can go and sit with me and we can talk about it. But if you don't want to talk about it, then that doesn't look good. You know what I mean? That just shows that you're very closed-minded. And that occurs all the time, man, with these people. Like, you could literally tell them, like, evidence of how, like, insight and enthusiastic sobriety is not good for our society, and how it legitimately, like, you abuse, like, people and stuff. And, dude, like, no, like, I don't want to be, like, living like those people. So I ended up moving back with my parents, and, the rest is great, man. I'm happy as hell after that, man. I'm so happy because I actually got to do a lot of great things that those people told me that I was never going to be able to do. They said if you were to never stay sober, you were to never, you're not going to be successful. You're going to die because you're a drug addict, you're a junkie, or whatever they want to call me. It's not the case, man. Not the case at all. And I say that without being like too arrogant. I'm not trying to be arrogant here. I'm just saying that I'm happy with my life, man. And I don't have to call 7 people to make a decision. And I don't get abused by people who have no right to be abusing me, because, they view me as less of a human being because I'm partaking in substances. So in conclusion, I really hope that, things are done to, hold these people accountable. Stop, with all the weird, corrupt crap going on in this program. There's evidence of the director embezzling money. A lot of people donate money. A lot of moms donate money and stuff. Like parents will donate money just so their kids can get put on steering and get treated, better and get more attention. It's disgusting, man, because it doesn't really go into improving the facilities or anything like that. They don't do any of that stuff. They don't say, oh, okay, we got some donations. Let's all go to a training seminar. No, man, it goes to the sports cars and stuff like that. They drive to the shop, and you could see them drive to the shop. Old Porsches, Camaros. Like, really? Like, it looks like, Clint Stonebreaker has a new, I said I wasn't going to name names, but I mean, come on. Stonebreaker shows up with a Porsche and all these expensive cars and stuff. It kind of shows that you're not really managing the funds correctly for this program because the counselors aren't making a lot of money. So, how I said, some people, become counselors. The counselors don't make a lot of money. The counselors don't make a lot of money at all. I think it's honestly kind of illegal how they kind of, maneuver it. But I think you get paid like $20K or some $25K or something like that your first year or something. Ridiculous, man. But you got to remember, and then you also have to pay $6,000 for a 90-day training. $6,000 just so you can lie and scam people. Here at UNLV, for my next semester, $3,000. Out of state, $3,000. How different is that from paying $6,000, man? $6,000 for some crap, that Clint Stonebreaker is going to teach you that you're probably never going to use in your life. So, and Glenn and all those people. But anyways, so yeah, you start seeing a lot of that stuff, happen. And I don't know, it just feels wrong, man. It feels wrong to witness this occur in our society where there are literally people who are just kind of treating these drug addicts terribly, profiting off of, their suffering and not thinking twice about it, because step 2, we've dropped 22,000. I would say that without, shame or anything. We dropped 22,000, man. And that's why I'm upset, 22,000. So this guy could, try to humiliate me. Nah. Nah, I don't think so. I don't think that's correct. And where it goes, God knows. God knows what they do with that money, besides buy sports cars and all those things. And you have to remember, too, a lot of these counselors come from wealthy families, too. So their parents will, oh, it's all right, that's okay. We'll just give you a ton of cash and stuff like that if you're sober. And I'm all for that. If you want to reward people for being clean, that's great. But not people who are clean and are doing illegal things. Because I'll say this, I haven't even mentioned this part too. And this third time, I know I said in conclusion, but I'm kind of just touching on all 3 of my experiences and what I'm kind of thinking about it, because it's been 2 years since I've graduated from the program. I've had a lot of time to think. Trust me, I've been out here in Las Vegas and I've had a lot of time to think. But yeah, man, I pretty much so I end up graduating and stuff like that, and I end up thinking about the program and stuff, and it's screwed. Oh, sorry, I was losing my train of thought. I haven't told you all this, but I've had a clean record all my life until I attended this program. And let me tell you something. Okay? but this is gonna be between me and you guys, the audience, whoever watches this video. Honestly, I don't know who's gonna watch it, and I don't know if anybody's ever has gone to this 49th minute that I'm talking about this program, man. But if you're here, thank God you're here, man, because just listen, okay? So pretty much we're at this big event, and it's at Full Circle coming. So by the Ingalls and Bethel, I think it's Bethel. I don't think it's Bethel View, but it's in that vicinity, like Forsyth Central, all that stuff. It's over there. So we're at this event. It's loud music, whatever. All these people that are like my age and stuff, just kind of walking around, talking, whatever. So yeah, we're having like these kind of like function games and having fun. And at one point in the function, they say, who's excited, to go to the Atlanta prison farm. And like I said, I didn't really think twice about it because I think the Atlanta prison farm is not really a bad place. Because like I've said before, like we go hang out in a lot of different places, like parks and stuff like that. Not a lot of good things happen when we go hang out. I'll say that. You'll see a lot of people like doing bonfires, which is arson, trespassing. These parks aren't even open half the time. So sometimes I remember being in the group chat and just calling the cops. I'm like, you guys are dumb. Like, somebody's going to get arrested. I might as well just tell the cops myself. It's like so screwed up of me to do. I'm not snitching, dude. Like, these people are criminals themselves. You got to understand, man. Like, they are criminals, dude. And so was I. But not, I don't like to view it that way anymore because I don't really go about my days like they do anymore. Not at all, man. Not at all. But so they say, yeah, let's go. Who's excited to go to the Atlanta prison farm? Mind you, these are two counselors that say this. And I don't think twice about it. So I ended up hopping in one of my friends' cars and we go to the Atlanta prison farm and we have a game of hide and seek. We're just running around, whatever. Then we see like a really bright LED light, just in our vicinity. And we're like, what's going on? Like, what is this? Maybe it's the cops that showed up, but that's all right. We'll just tell them that we're just walking out of here. So we go walk up to the cops, and they're like, put your hands up in the air. And we're like, oh, shit. Here we go, man. Here we go. We put our hands up in the air. We start walking up. And mind you, I had no idea this was occurring at the time. But, these cops were holding like AR-15s and shotguns up to us, man, like wearing bulletproof vests. I'm like, what is happening, man? Like, we were just playing hide and seek. What's the deal? Yeah, man. So we get arrested. Come to find that there was a protest going on in the Atlanta prison farm at this time. And a cop had been shot less than 72 hours from us playing hide and seek, more like acting like stupid delinquents. But pretty much we get arrested. I spend a night in DeKalb County Jail with my roommates and stuff. It's embarrassing, man, like to be in DeKalb County Jail because a freaking cult told you to go play hide and seek. Come to find, you think about it a little bit. It's like, oh, the views of this this group's views are very, I guess not supportive of cops or law enforcement in general. And just law enforcement in general. This group is not like law enforcement, man. So I'm not surprised that two counselors have actually told us to go to the Atlanta prison farm. Mind you, that's like conspiracy, I'm pretty sure, because we don't really even know. The case is still open. We don't even know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. So that's conspiracy already, to know that something occurred and you had a piece to play, but you didn't go to say anything. Like, the hell are you, what? Like, that's got to be crazy, bro. Like, what the hell? Yeah, so that ended up happening. We get released from jail. Mind you, I'm not going to say their names because I'm not a terrible human being, man. But there was 3 people who also ended up freaking leaving and evading the police when we got caught. How stupid do you have to be to do that to begin with? Some of you people already got charged with evading the police. So why are you evading them again? You get caught, you're going to prison. That's a tough case to beat if you were to get caught. And that was extremely immature and just stupid of those people to do that. So I wanted to say that, maybe use your head, next time you decide to run away from the police. But yeah, I remember that occurred in the program, and Oh, and I should say this too. I'll throw this in there. I know this is pretty screwed up too, but you'll hear things too about like how the counselors, behave inappropriately with the people that are there. Like people that are looking for treatment. Dude, I can say his name because I mean, he doesn't work there anymore. I don't think he has anything to do with the program anymore, but I'll mention it because this is a real thing that occurred. Curtin. That's his last name. That's all I'm going to say. Curtin. The dude slept with somebody that he was treating an outpatient. What's wrong with you, man? Keep it in your pants. You don't have to sleep with people who are looking for treatment and stuff for their issues. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? But I think they ended up getting married. But if I'm wrong about that, then I mean, I don't know. That's just screwed up, bro. Like, honest to God, that should not happen, but it did. Sadly, that should not happen. I've also heard stories, about similar situations going on, and step two and all that stuff. Really, it's a shame that stuff occurs, man. Because you're really expecting to get help, not for people to take advantage of you like that. Like the hell, And I don't know, man. That's sad. But yeah, you'll come to find that this group kind of treats or utilizes women to kind of forward their agenda. And this is absolutely true. You can't tell me this is not true. It's true. And what I mean by that is that they will kind of like heavily support you into getting into a relationship inside of the program with somebody because they know that's what kind of keeps people to stay. They know that if somebody's in a relationship, they're going most likely to stay. Because if they don't get into a relationship, they can say, well, maybe I have like an ex-girlfriend I just got back with outside of the program. I'm going to go devote my life to her. Like, I'm just going to, then they move or something, but the program tries to create like, dating games or something like that, to get people to, stay in the program and stuff like that. They'll heavily, say, you should ask somebody out on a date, and stuff. And, but it's bad, man. It doesn't have good intentions. And then they will also say you want to leave the program. You're not doing so well. They'll just get into the head of your girlfriend or boyfriend and say, maybe, like the counselors will kind of start counseling you and start saying, I would just, break up with him because I think that he's, leaving the programs. So it's really just a form of like coercing people to do things through other means. You know what I mean? Like they don't just go up to you and say it. Like they'll create these circumstances where they can kind of have control over you. Yeah, so I mean, how screwed up is that? I mean, I know, dude, how screwed up is that? You don't really hear about this stuff, man, but it does happen, yeah. I remember, we also used to throw mortars into mailboxes and eggs at people, man. Somebody pulled a gun out at us one time because we did that. I know, man. It's crazy. You know, what this group does, man, And it's all kind of like justified because they say, well, we're sober. Dude, being sober doesn't mean that you can go out and trespass and commit arson and do all these things, man. Commit conspiracy for, embezzlement. You can't be like doing these things just because you're sober. Like that doesn't make sense. That's like saying like, oh, I'm doing really well and I'm getting all A's, so I'm just gonna go out and just do terrible things to other people. But I have all A's. I got 4.0. That doesn't mean you can do. That doesn't justify bad behavior. And I really hope that people, come to find that this is not a good way to treat substance abuse issues. Really, I have a hard time sometimes, just kind of letting go of the things that I saw here. I really feel like that a lot of my friends would still be alive today had they actually went to a real rehab where they empower you, where they dive into, psychological evaluations. What's actually wrong with you? Do you have ADHD? Do you have bipolar? It's not just a moral character failing or whatever that these idiots, preach about all the time. Because that's what they say. They say, there's no victims or volunteers to, rape victims. They say that. I don't know if I'm supposed to bleep that out, but who cares? yeah, they say that to, victims, and they really just kind of throw you under the bus, man. A lot. They throw you under the bus. If you're not politically aligned with them, you're done for. You're not going to be popular in the group. You're going to be kind of looked at or viewed as less than, already on top of being a drug addict. So yeah, I hope that one day, people kind of come to terms and say, look, we have a better solution. We don't have to lose more people into these like, scamming, crappy rehabs, and we don't have to traumatize more people. We don't have to give more young people nicotine addictions. We don't have to, tell a bunch of people a bunch of garbage that's not even true. Fictionary tales you read in the big book that are just full of bogus. Things like this, like addiction is a disease or something like that, and a moral failing. It's not true, man. Not true. And I think those directors and owners and counselors eventually, there will be a check and balance. There will be a moment where people will become more aware of what it is you guys are doing, and you won't be able to get away with these things. So I really hope you guys think about it. I really hope you guys think about this in a different light and stuff like that. I released this YouTube video because I just wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to be educational, really. I know I had my opinion thrown in there a little bit, but hey, man, this is my perspective on what occurred. So thank you guys for listening to this. I know this is an hour-long video. This is ridiculous. If you guys happen to watch all of this or watch it in segments, thanks. I appreciate it, really. And go have a good day, man. I know I am. So peace.